How much white space do you currently have in your diary? We are so focused on delivering value for our clients. We're so focused on hitting deadlines that we kind of forget about ourselves and what we actually want. Realistically, I say you shouldn't be working more than 4 days per week actually delivering client work. You should have a day which is free, which is really just for your business. If we don't do this consistently, if we don't actually create this time, it leads to a few things. The first thing it leads to is just burnout. And we can end up feeling like our business is a prison. So let's talk about how we practically implement this. So the first thing is, how much white space do you currently have in your diary? That was a question one of my coaches asked me a while ago when I was feeling a little bit stuck and really didn't have clarity on the kind of business that I wanted to build. What I realized was that I was basically working too hard. I was doing too many sales calls. I was doing too many coaching calls. I basically had a calendar that was jam-packed with stuff. And at the time, it felt quite exciting. It felt like the business was moving fast. It felt like I was working hard. I got to meet interesting people. I got to travel to interesting places. But what I didn't have was downtime. And what I didn't have was white space where I could do deep work, where I could reflect on what I really wanted in my life and business and get clarity on the direction I was moving in. In my experience, this is very, very common for creative business owners, especially when we go through busy periods. We are so focused on delivering value for our clients. We're so focused on hitting deadlines. We're so focused on growing the business that we kind of forget about ourselves and what we actually want. Now, I just wanted to record this short solo episode to touch on this subject because I really do think it's so important. And I've been personally working with some founders of creative studios recently where we've helped them to carve some white space, some time in their business to focus on wider thinking, to focus on the strategy of their own business, to focus on being more creative, sometimes just to focus on having time for themselves. And it really has been a game changer for them. So there's a couple of things to consider here. And I know there might be some people listening to this episode who are thinking, Matt, I've got loads of white space in my diary. I feel like there are no opportunities right now. I don't have enough work and I'm panicking. And so if that's the case, then my advice to you is to essentially block your diary, like time block your diary with opportunity creating activities, whether that is reaching out to people on LinkedIn and having a bit of a routine every single day, whether that's reaching out to old clients, whatever it is. If you feel like there's a lack of opportunity right now, you should have at least 2 to 3 hours a day in your calendar where you are purely focused on building relationships, reaching out to people, solving problems, demonstrating value, and essentially becoming a creative partner that people look to solve problems in their business. That being said, if that is not you and you're quite busy right now and you have lots of projects on, then this episode really is for you. There's a few ways that we can create more white space. But before I talk about that, I really just want to emphasize the importance of white space. Now, you probably know this intrinsically, but it's one of those things where I can know that going to the gym and eating healthily is good for me and it's going to make me live longer and all of these things doesn't necessarily mean that I do it. So a lot of founders that I speak to, they understand the concept of having white space in their calendar. They understand the concept of creating time to work on their business. They understand the concept of having time to strategize and think about the bigger picture, or even time built in to existing projects to be creative and come up with new ideas and be innovative. However, what does it actually look like in practice? And so if we don't do this consistently, if we don't actually create this time, it leads to a few things. The first thing it leads to is just burnout. right? That's just a really obvious one, where if we're working too hard for too long and we don't have this kind of space to strategize and think, we just get burnt out. But more importantly, the thing that it leads to long term is building a business that doesn't actually serve us. And we can end up feeling like our business is a prison. I did an episode with Dan Bolton a few weeks ago. If you search for Creative Courage and Dan Bolton, you will hear this business. Now, he is somebody that has mentored me and has built several multi-million pound businesses. He's a pretty impressive guy. But one of the things that he talks about is this idea that it's very easy to create a business that turns into a prison. It's very easy to create a business where you are working for the business rather than the business working for you. And it's like another form of having a job, but it's just more stressful. It's less secure. It's less stable. It's all of the kind of disadvantages basically of having a job without the security. So the first thing we've got to recognize is this is a kind of point of decision that we've got to get to in our business where we say, do you know what? I'm just going to carve out half a day a week for me time, for my business. And this is one of the things that we encourage our clients to do. Realistically, I say you shouldn't be working more than 4 days per week actually delivering client work. You should have a day which is free, which is really just for your business. And so a lot of people struggle with this because they struggle with the idea of capacity. And what I mean by that is they say, well, Matt, if I took a whole day off, then I wouldn't be able to deliver these projects on time, or I'd have to have one less client, and therefore we wouldn't earn the same money that we were earning. So let's talk about how we practically implement this. Now we've really looked at, well, what is the cost of not having this time and not having white space in the diary? Let's look at, okay, how do we actually make this happen? How do we take this from like a high level idea to something we can do in our business day to day? So the first thing is we want to determine what our capacity is to leave our clients feeling delighted. Like, how many clients can you realistically work with at one time where they're going to get the attention that they need from your team, where you've got some contingency in there for things going wrong, where you're really going to leave those clients feeling delighted and shouting from the rooftops about your service and what you do? So that's the first thing that we need to establish. So let's say that number is 5. Well, if that number is 5, really that number is 4, because you need to treat yourself like a client. Okay. So one of the key concepts here is that we want to give our business and ourselves as much attention as we do to our clients. And this really is the key to growth and to building something that really serves you. So once you know that number, you then have to work backwards. So let's do kind of easy maths. And let's say that you can handle 5 clients at a time, including your business. So it was 6 and now it's down to 5 because your business is one of your clients. Let's say you want to generate 50 grand a month. Well, each one of those clients or each one of those projects has got to be worth 10 grand. And so we want to simplify this process as much as possible. So 5 clients a month, or a maximum of 5 clients at one time, and each project needs to be 10K. So that's 50K worth of business over whatever time period. Maybe it takes you roughly 6 weeks to deliver a brand or a website or whatever it is. You work that out and then you map that out throughout the entire year. And that is your baseline. And so what you think about, you can work backwards from there all the way up to how many conversations you need to have, how many leads you need to generate. I like Daniel Priestley's oversubscribed model, where he talks about you need somewhere between 5 to 10 times the number of conversations as you do projects. So what I mean by that is if you need 5 clients, you need 5 to 10 times that number of conversations to guarantee that you're going to get 5 clients that match your ideal client criteria. So first of all, work out the number of the capacity of leaving your clients delighted. Then -1 from it because you are a client. Then reverse engineer that so you work out how many clients you need, say, in a 12-month period and what that works out to be monthly. And then think about 5 to 10 times that is the amount of conversations you need to generate or leads you need to generate. And that should match the number that you have written down, which is the amount of revenue that you want to create on a monthly basis. So we want to try and make this as mathematical as possible and as logical as possible, because if we just do it from an emotional perspective, oftentimes it can feel like, oh, we're not working hard enough, or we don't quite have the projects that we want, so we need to double down on certain things. And if we let emotion drive our decisions, very often that leads us to a place of burnout, or leads us to a place where we're not building the business that's actually serving us. So really, this episode is about creating that time for yourself, creating that white space in your diary, but in a very practical, logistical way. So just try that right now. Like after this episode, write down that number. Like, what is the number that you can handle in terms of clients or projects where those clients genuinely will be delighted? You're not stretching yourself. You're not stretching your team. It feels good. Okay. -1 from that number because you become a client. And I'd also encourage you to kind of talk to your team about this and imagine, right, Fridays are the day that we work on our projects and we do our work. And this is our time for the business. Like, what are we designing? What are we building? Where are we innovating? Where do we need to improve? Right? So that's the second number you have. Then you need to work out what that looks like over a 12-month period. And it's quite helpful, I find, to divide that number by 12, so you know how many new clients or new projects you need every single month. And then you want to work out what your target monthly income is and divide it by those number of projects. So you now know, for example, let's say you need 2 new clients every single month, right? So 20 or 2 new projects every single month. So 24 projects in a year, and each one of those projects needs to be an average of, or a minimum, of 10 grand, right? So as a minimum, you're doing about $250,000 a year from those 24 projects, right? Okay, great. Now we need to think about, if we want 24 projects, 5 to 10 times that amount is the amount of conversations we need to be having, leads we need to be generating, people that are interested in some way in what we need to do. Not sales conversations we need to be having, as in we're presenting, a proposal to them, but people who are genuinely interested, like, hey, Matt, tell me a little bit more about what it looks like to work with you and your team. Like that's a lead. That's somebody who's actually interested in what you do. And so then you can just reverse engineer that really, really clearly. And you can say, look, we know what our numbers are now. And so our strategy needs to be, how do we generate that amount of conversations? How do we make sure that every project that we do has a minimum value of 10K? So we know the numbers and we don't stray away from those numbers. And so that is like the very practical way to create more white space in your diary and ensure that you have time to think, ensure that you have time to be creative, right? The reason that we actually started this business in the first place, to be creative, to feel in flow, to enjoy the business that we're building and ensure that it's actually working for us and we're not just working for our business. And so this is such an important concept that is missed by so many people. And hopefully you've taken 10, 15 minutes out of your day just to flick onto this podcast and see what it's about, even if you're busy, because that's the crucial thing. When you are at your busiest, when you have stuff going on in your personal life, maybe you're moving house or you're moving location, or something's happened where you're super busy in your personal life and you're at capacity with clients, it's those times you still need to be able to craft that white space in your diary to be able to think, to strategize, and to work on your business so that you're building something that's really serving you. Hopefully this podcast, as a minimum, just served as a bit of inspiration and a kick up the arse to not oversubscribe yourself and create some white space in your calendar. As always, if you enjoyed this podcast, please do hit that subscribe button. It means a lot to me. It means that we can get better guests. It means we can spend more on content production. It means that I can give you more value the more subscribers that we have, and share it with a friend who may find it useful. Thanks for listening. This is the Creative Courage Podcast, and my name is Matt Essen.